So we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to go through the introductions, who are we and why are we talking about onboarding, and specifically designing and optimizing your onboarding plan. The importance of mapping and documenting your onboarding process. We talk to lots of companies every week, every day, about their onboarding, and we can certainly share some of the advantages and some of the things to think about as you're documenting your own process. We'll talk a little bit about the journey that we've been at Arrows in documenting our process, and obviously helping other folks document theirs. And then building a clear path to success. What are some sort of best practices? What are some principles to think about as you're actually designing the plan that you're going to put in front of a customer during your onboarding process? And it's sort of part of that bigger onboarding journey and the path to success that you're creating for your customers. And then finally, we'll get into reporting on performance in your onboarding plan and how to start thinking about ways to iterate and remove the roadblocks that you're seeing, the roadblocks that are showing up in your reports and in your data, to improve the overall experience and importantly, improve the performance of your onboarding program. And then, as I mentioned, finally, we'll get into some Q&A. If there's anything specific, drop it in the chat, and we will get to it either as we're going through these other topics or at the end in Q&A. So, introductions. I'm Stuart Bolcombe. I run marketing at Arrows. We build customer-facing plans for onboarding, really any process that you're working on with your customer where you have a defined outcome that you're trying to get to, and you need to create a clear path to get there. And notably, those plans attach directly to either deals or tickets in HubSpot. So if you're using HubSpot as a place where you're keeping your customer data, your team is living, then Arrows attaches directly to those processes to give your customers a view into what they need to do to get to success. And I'm joined today by Shareil, head of customer success, who previously ran onboarding programs and scaled onboarding programs at Booking.com and Sprout Social. Welcome, Shareil.
Thanks for having me. I am very biased, but this is one of my favorite workshops.
Yeah, I really like this one too. I think it's fun to share and sort of get in the weeds of the things that we're thinking about every day, and that we're lots of learning from customers and from our own process. It's kind of meta, this one, because we're running this ourselves.
Literally an hour before this, we were talking about our own Arrows onboarding process, you and I, and going through our template and iterating on it and optimizing it, which is it's the whole philosophy of onboarding never ending that we talk about, which is really honing that process in and making sure that the steps are in the right order and the tasks are in the right order, and the things we're asking customers to do are actually driving them to their moments of value realization versus just the ones we have deemed ourselves. So it's obviously an important and near and dear to my heart topic, but more so because it sets your customers ultimately up for success, which makes our lives in customer success as a whole easier.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's an interesting... We'll see if anybody... We ran this workshop a month or so ago on the same topic. This will be different. We'll get into some different things. But if you were at that workshop or you've seen what we talked about there, you will see that our plan today and the plan that we're going to walk through today, which is the plan that we put in front of at Arrows, is actually different today than it was a month ago. So we are iterating and improving on the plan ourselves. So why care about onboarding in general? We just sort of talked about we're going to talk about a lot of onboarding stuff today, specifically around designing your plan. But why care about onboarding in the first place? It's a huge area of opportunity for the vast majority of companies, is sort of what it ultimately boils down to. Most companies, as the stat shows, most customers think that companies could do a much better job when it comes to onboarding, and that not only that, it's not only a satisfaction thing, but the importance of onboarding goes well beyond that first step, the first few steps, the first month, or whatever you're deeming as your onboarding period of the customer journey. There are long-term benefits, especially if you're running a recurring revenue business, to expansions, renewals, upsells, and cross-sells. All starts with a great onboarding experience. So it's definitely something that we feel strongly about. We're biased here, of course, but you really do see the benefits across the entire journey and across the business as well. onboarding really is a growth function. It drives revenue, drives expansion, and importantly, makes happy customers who are successful with your product and will tell other folks about their experience. So what we're going to get into today, as I mentioned, retention expansion starts on day one, and building an onboarding process that gets your customers from where they are when they sign up for your product to the outcomes that they want faster and more effectively, more consistently, is sort of the name of the game here. So we're going to dive right into it. I'm going to turn it over to Shareil. He's going to show the plan that we use to do this, and we're going to talk through how we got there, how we mapped out the process that we're running with customers today, and how we're sort of thinking about the evolution of that over time. So, Shareil, take it away.
Okay, so if you're not familiar at all with kind of the concept of arrows, what you're seeing is an arrows action plan here. This is a template. The idea is you make plan templates, and then that houses your most, I'll use the term generic version of that onboarding for that segment or for that customer type. You can have multiple templates. And then as you attach these to customers or share them with customers, you can go in and update things to that individual customer's needs. But at a high level, these are the steps that we actually use for our Arrows customers. This is a plan that we use for customers who are using our Arrows plus HubSpot integration and the data connections and setting up and configuring things inside of their HubSpot account. And so the idea is, what are the next set of things and steps we need you to do, and can we put them in this plan? Now, you can start by putting this in a Google Doc, in a spreadsheet, wherever. You might already have that. You might have it in different parts of your CRM. You might be emailing customers these tidbits throughout, but this encapsulates everything into one place and gives customers one place to return to. And we'll show you the data side of it and how it integrates with HubSpot and how you can actually run this process through there, because that's where the real value is understanding where customers are in the process at any time, what visibility there is for the rest of your team and organization into that process. How do you actually use that data, like Stuart and I were talking about, to come and optimize the process itself? So to put that into layman's terms, like if customers are getting stuck, and if 80% of them keep getting stuck on the same task, odds are you need to go look at that task and figure out, are the steps unclear, or where you're sending them unclear? But the plan itself becomes that foundation that you then build and optimize and scale on, while being the communication tool that your customers are making progress through. So what I like to tell people, and we deal with this ourselves all the time, is we don't have the most perfect process behind the scenes. We miss handoffs, we miss CRM fields, we also drop the ball sometimes. The customers don't feel that pain though, because they always know what's next and they have this plan in front of them. Now, the way we thought about our own process, and this is probably I've been at Arrows for a year and 3 months now. This is probably the 7th or 8th iteration of this. And that doesn't mean we have spent a lot of time optimizing it. But once you have that starting point, then you can tweak it and change little things over time to get to a place where we are today, where this thing actually flows. And so if we look at some of our phases here, what we did at the beginning of this was really ask ourselves, what do we think are the biggest value moments of Arrows? Which is important. But more important, what do our customers think is the biggest value that they're coming to Arrows for? And ideally, those two things align. That means you're building product and design for a thing that's actually solving customer needs. If you're working on getting there, focus on those customer needs first. And then make sure your steps and phases get your customers to their value needs, to the thing that they came to you for, to the problems they're trying to solve using your product or service. So really, each one of these phases or sections, whatever you want to refer to them as, should have a pretty clear outcome, and it should be beneficial to your customers. It should also be beneficial to you, but the focus should be your customers. So if I look at our plan, and this is something we actually use with our real customers, we are also using this version of the plan as a means to hand off from sales to onboarding. And so we have kind of this, we call it a let's make it official stage. But sometimes we know that an invoice is left unpaid or the kickoff call isn't scheduled yet. And this usually happens at the point of sale. And when this hasn't happened in sales, we also introduce it in this plan. Or we have our sales reps actually share this plan with customers. At the end of the day, it's a URL. That's the beauty of the arrows plan, is they can share with that customer or that prospect at that stage and say, once you pay for your product, once you sign up, once you're officially a customer of ours, here is Shareil. You're going to work with him over the next 5 or 6 weeks. In that time, what we'll cover is a number of steps. Here they are below. And so that when this makes its way to me, is I actually open this plan with customers. If they've paid their invoice, this is checked off. Each one of these tasks you can open up and expand. And this is, I'll go into view mode so you can get a better picture. That was in edit mode, apologies. So the idea is each task has a task name, a description of what needs to be done in there, and then you can link things like a Stripe URL or something like that if you actually want them to go pay the invoice. We're using a demo account that was cleared recently, so that link is actually missing. But imagine there's a link here to push customers to. So as customers make progress on this template, they can always know what's next. These get marked as completed. And then they make progress through here, eventually getting them to this getting started phase. So what I need you to do before you can use arrows is pay for the thing and schedule your kickoff call. You can see here that's the phase that's open and front and center. That's what's next up for a customer. Then if I get into this getting started phase, so the clear outcome here is to get them to finish the process of buying the product and then schedule time to go to the next person in that process, in this case, onboarding. Once you're there, there's this getting started phase. So what we need you to do is actually give us some information and grant us access and maybe authenticate a couple things on your end. So we've laid those all out here. The end goal of this section is to give you access into arrows and make sure that your HubSpot integration is configured correctly with arrows. I also want you to share your existing documents with me if you have them, because then me and my team get to go in and review those documents, and we get to come to our kickoff call more prepared and more knowledgeable about your actual process. And then we get into things like configuring your arrows template. So you're looking at my arrows template currently. What we're working on then with you is getting you to craft your version of it. So you've shared your process, you've accepted your invites, you've accessed the account. The next thing I need you to do is go build this template, because that first moment of value for you, a customer, is being able to share a plan with a customer. So what I'm trying to do is get you to the point of being able to share that first plan. So based on your process above, let's have you start your template. We'll schedule some time to review that template together, and then we'll get to testing it and so on. So down here now we're actually sending that plan to a customer. That is where then we unlock the value of things like HubSpot reporting, HubSpot workflows, all those additional layers. Now, to give you a real tangible example, in a version of this plan 4 or 5 versions ago, we had this HubSpot configuration stuff near the top, because we do believe that is a huge value of the product. You get all of your data in one point, you have no data silo here. Everyone else in your team gets to see where things are progressing in here. So to give you some context, if you don't know arrows, as you mark things off of here and mark tasks completed for a customer inside of HubSpot, you will see that task is completed. You will see progress being made on the plan. There's an arrows card that gives you a high level visibility into all of these data points that are really what's making up this plan. But we were leading with this HubSpot configuration piece, which obviously is very valuable, but it's not valuable until you actually have a template and you've sent it to customers. So we were really leading people to this blank state of blank dashboards and blank reports, which isn't a huge value add. So over time, we've moved this down a little bit further, and we now have a feature called sequential phasing, which actually allows us to hide this completely from customers. So we really want you to focus on this immediate getting things set up, configuring your template, testing it with the customer. Then let's get into HubSpot and make sure we are validating the data points you want to see are in HubSpot. We're automating the right pieces. We just released a new new metric called engaged plans, where we're now able to tell you, are customers actually engaging with your plans? That's the things we want to talk about and make sure we are seeing optimization and progress towards your initial goals. And most of our customers come to us with the initial goal of taking their onboarding or implementation process, recreating it in a place that's easier for their customers to digest, and then having all the data to be able to make decisions and reporting on it. So we're helping you get to that point of sending a customer that plan. Then we jump into the actual configuration piece of it. And what I'm doing is getting you more and more hooked along the way to the Arrows product here. By design, that's helping solve your needs. So yes, it is selfish in a stance of I'm trying to get you to adopt the product, but I'm doing it in a way that's actually solving most people's first goal, which is being able to communicate their onboarding steps with their customers. Once we're there, you are also far more inclined as a customer to come back and do this next stage because there will be instant value. Once we set up these reports, there's going to be instant data in them because now you've shared a plan. The behind the scenes data is connected and it's working with Arrows and HubSpot. So this part becomes more valuable at the right time of this process. And for you, you're likely more inclined to go do these things because you're going to get that instant gratification of having created a template, having sent it to a customer and seeing some of that progress. And then lastly, we say onboarding never ends all the time. We want to also communicate what happens after this setup. So yes, onboarding doesn't end, but there has to be a clear state of value has been reached and then adoption and activation from there. We like to communicate that as next steps. So we do schedule recurring CSM calls with our customers. We do schedule performance analysis and plan optimization check-ins. And what I want to convey here for you is we've set these things up. We've showed you how to do it. You understand why you do it now because all that data is flowing and you can report on it. And this is what's going to come next. So a pretty fast overview, but this is 5 or 6 iterations of this and testing it with customers and learning from our own data and realizing where customers are or aren't getting stuck and then piecing this together. And the other big takeaway we've learned is most people, ourselves included, know generally the steps they need to convey to customers. The challenge is the avenue for conveying them. So that's where we're getting lost in emails or spreadsheets or overly complex project management tools that can be replaced by a more simple action plan like this. And the second thing is those steps might be in the wrong order that we're presenting them to customers. So that's the part of optimization over time that you fix and you make better for that customer experience, is making sure that the right tasks are being asked of customers at the right time in their journey so that there aren't those gaps or stalls in time where people are wondering, why am I doing this? How's this related to my overall goals? How's this going to help me get to using this product or this service more quickly? So that is a high-level overview of like how we go through this and how we think about it and how we optimize it.
Yeah, I think it's a good overview. To back up a second, for like obviously we dove right into Arrows here, which is you can build an onboarding plan using, as Shareil mentioned, spreadsheets, documents, project management tools. One of the things that is clear when you are building an Arrows plan, and I think is a broader topic to talk about, is that you're forced to introduce some kind of hierarchy here, or you're at least encouraged to introduce some kind of hierarchy here. Mm-hmm. If you have your plan, and this is a great first step, as Shareil mentioned, is to put down all the tasks, all the things that you're going to need to do, that you're going to have to do, that your customers are going to have to do during this phase of their journey. But then when you really get into optimizing and building a plan that you can put in front of a customer so it is clear what the next thing they need to do is, that's where that hierarchy becomes really important. And also thinking about the dependencies of, okay, in order to be able to do this, I'm going to have to do this first. And then once you have, the order that you have to put things in, how do you tie those things back to, importantly, first off, making sure that you know what is the value that this customer is trying to reach? Like, how are they defining success? What is the outcome that they want to get to? And then how are you going to align all the tasks that you have, the process that you're putting in front of them during onboarding, to that goal, right? There are some things in here which are relatively quick, like connecting your HubSpot account is just an OAuth, click a couple of buttons, make sure that you're signed into HubSpot, and it's complete. There are other things like building your first template, which we would argue and we encourage customers to not make that a large, drawn-out process, because really there is a lot of value in getting to a version which is ready to test and then being able to iterate on that once you have data flowing. But that is a task that customers often feel, get overwhelmed by or feel like is going to take a lot of time to complete. So, Shareil, maybe you can, and this is from, obviously we've run this process a lot with customers. What are things that you think about when you have a task or a phase in the journey that is scary to customers, or is something that, and not to jump ahead, but like if you're looking at data, if you're looking at data, maybe you are seeing, well, this phase takes 3 times as long as anything else, or this task takes 3 times as long as anything else. Maybe it's a data migration. Maybe it's you need to loop in an extra person or a new person to complete a step. What are some of the things that you think about when it comes to positioning that, or a thing like that, a phase like that, a task like that in the plan, but also sort of objection handling on making sure that you can keep momentum going and keep moving forward in the plan?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I hear this all the time from both our customers and just in my own experience in this world. There can be a feeling of overwhelming workload that you're now putting in front of customers, and I think it's extra dangerous when our marketing teams and our marketing websites and our sales teams are saying this thing is easy to set up, fast to deploy, it's going to change your life instantly, which is all great, right? We have to do those things. We have to strive for that type of product and service. Where there can be a big disconnect and then cause for ripples and gaps in the process is then someone turns around and actually sees unexpectedly that now there's 10 phases of things and 100 tasks I need to accomplish, and this thing takes 90 days. So the problem isn't the number of tasks and the number of phases. This plan itself helps you control some of that. Like putting 100 rows in a spreadsheet is instantly overwhelming. Putting 100 rows in line in here at least lets you control which ones are visible. You can collapse things. You can focus on what's immediately next. But my first and most important recommendation is don't shy away from long phases or long tasks if those are the things that have to happen to get a customer to their first moment of value. A common mistake I see where people try to make it look smaller or look shorter is jamming too many steps into a single task, which actually causes more problems because now that customer is stuck and lost, A, but B, you don't actually know where they are stuck or lost because there are so many tasks inside of this thing. And so a good example is reporting. We're always pushing our people to go look at reports or export something or do something that is easy to do, right? Like go schedule your report. But the reality is there are a number of steps ahead of that, like set up an authentication, create a profile, push data to and from things so that report becomes meaningful. So we try to make it seem really easy and streamlined. Go export your report. Sure, the functionality is super easy, but the value isn't the export per se, it's the data that's in it. And to get the data in there, there's 2 or 3 steps that you have to do that we have now skipped over because we're highlighting a feature versus the value of getting to that thing. And so don't shy away from these long phases, and communicate that they are going to be long. So in that sales cycle, say, next up, you're going to work with Shareil. This process can take 30 to 60 days. In that, pull up this plan. We will cover all of these things. Don't worry about, this is what I literally tell customers, don't worry about this HubSpot configuration piece. We'll get there. And if I want, I can lock this from being seen in this version. But I like to pull this plan up on my first kickoff call with a customer and reconfirm that we have all these things we're going to do together. As long as they're the things that are getting them to those little tidbits of value, which is why I said each of these phases should have some sort of outcome, people will keep going. They will keep making progress. They will do the things you're asking them to do if they are then turning into value for them. So if I'm telling you at the end of these 20 steps, you're going to have an Arrows action plan that you can send to your customers, and I can get you there, you're likely not going to worry about the number of steps. You're going to worry about doing those things to get to your moment of value because you have deemed that as the thing you want to do. Now, if you have 100 steps and you drop them all in an email and drop them into someone's inbox and say, do all these things, and you haven't clearly explained both the how and why I should be doing those things, then absolutely, it's going to be overwhelming. You're going to cause blockers in the process. The advantage of having data like this behind an action plan is the ability to go quickly see, because now I can physically go see, oh crap, 80% of these customers are stuck on this arrows template configuration step. Craft your first template. That is a big step. This one by design takes a long time, and it is a singular step of crafting your template. But to get you here comfortably, what we're doing up top is making you gather some of that process. If you don't have that process already documented, on the kickoff call, we're walking you through what that can look like and how to start go crafting that and getting you into the template to do it. We are jumping in between here and reviewing your templates and giving you feedback, whether it's video calls or jumping on live calls together, so that by the time you get to here, you can actually go and craft your first template. Whereas, again, before, we hadn't optimized for that. We were just telling people to go craft their template, and we had some sort of Help Center article attached to here, but people were still getting stuck, because to do that, you actually needed to do a couple steps ahead of that, which was the mental mapping of what this process could look like. What are your actual steps? What are you doing today? What are you hoping to do differently to get people to that point? So, all that to say, don't fear complex implementations. Actually embrace them. But over time, also ask yourself constantly, and this goes into that optimization piece, if people are continuously getting stuck, why is that happening? And then can we address those things proactively by marketing it differently, by selling it differently, by creating self-guided resources earlier in the process? So every stage of the life cycle, like onboarding is a slice of it, right? After that, there's adoption, there's renewals, there's expansion, there's all those pieces. Each one of those moments is an opportunity to ask yourself, what are we doing here reactively? And can we do it in the prior stage proactively? And then move it up and up and up, ultimately getting customers to value faster.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, that the more you can introduce sort of precursors to the step, the easier it will be to actually get the step completed, right? And I think to go sort of right back to the very beginning, that is really the value of documenting the whole process and being able to see, what are we working with here? Like, are there steps? And just as a quick example, we looked at this plan very recently, Shareil and I, and we added 6 tasks and 2 phases. We didn't really change what we're doing in the process. We just changed how we're framing what we're doing in the process, right? Moving around, okay, you're going to schedule a call at the end of the previous phase so that we have a feedback loop and we're able to review the thing that we did, make sure, verify that that the thing that we are doing together, that we're working on, is actually having the outcome, or having the impact for you that we expect it to have, right? The onboarding is not, and even though it sounds a little weird to say, because this is a checklist at the end of the day, there are things that you can check off. Onboarding is not a checklist, right? Onboarding, or the success or failure of onboarding, is not determined by how many tasks are completed in a checklist, right? It's determined by, did the customer realize the value that they signed up for? Do they have a clear path to continue realizing value with your product? So there may well be steps that you identify when you document this that you should just get rid of altogether. There may well be steps that the best kind, we talk about, homework and setting customers up to be able to complete the tasks. The best task is one they don't even have to complete, right? Maybe there is a step in your onboarding process that you can just go do, right? This is a thing that I know you do for our customers, is like, well, we can just go build things in your HubSpot account. What are the ways that we can short circuit the process of getting customers to value, and having everything laid out sort of helps highlight those opportunities, or help discover those opportunities in combination with the data and the feedback that we're getting from customers.
Totally. And the one thing I didn't mention in that piece about too many steps, things being overwhelming, over communicating, the other thing to also think about in your process over time is who is actually responsible for those things. So yes, we might have 25 tasks here, but part of this is also the ability to schedule tasks to individual people on the plan and to add due dates, which obviously drive that action and urgency. But this doesn't have to be a singular person. We have roles in this case where there's always a point person and a single coordinator on a plan, and then you can have as many other participants from either side. So whether it's your team that's responsible for something or your customer's side that's responsible for something, each of those tasks can then go be individually assigned to those individual roles. So what might initially be 20 tasks could actually be 5 for Stuart, 5 for me, 5 for the next person, 5 for Kim. And so that is also part of crafting that journey and crafting that mental mapping of the process, is asking yourself, in addition to when do these things need to be done and how do they need to be done, who is actually responsible for them. And those might also change over time, but they can help combat some of that overwhelming feeling of, is this all on my shoulders now since I've been sold, or is there a room to work on this with my internal team and your internal team? And the beauty of this is it's all in one place. It's all clearly communicated to somebody. They know generally who's responsible and what's coming up next. And then when people do get stuck, like Stuart just said, unpack that, try to figure out why, ask yourself, is it the wrong time? It's likely the right thing. It just might be being asked of the wrong person or at the wrong time in that journey. So it's not a waste of time to go and document all this and write it out. It is just asking yourself then, when in this process does it need to be actually happening?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. It's something that we talked about sort of right at the start of this plan, is when you're introducing onboarding in the journey, right? The earlier you're able to introduce onboarding, the earlier you're able to set expectations around what is going to be required, who is going to need to be involved during onboarding, the more or the easier of a time you're going to have once you actually get there, right? You're going to be able to make sure that you have the right people have their calendar blocked, that they are actually available for a call, that they're actually available to go implement something on their side in their systems that they need to, that becomes a dependency for making progress and getting to those value moments that you're looking at. And I think that's something that comes up a lot is, we see customers who will say, my onboarding process today takes 60 days, it takes 90 days. We have a really hard time. Customers, ghost us early in the process. And usually it's because expectations weren't set up front and there wasn't sort of a pre-planning or no time was set aside to be able to prioritize this, or it sort of slipped down folks' priorities because they didn't know how to prioritize it, because they didn't know what the investment of time or the investment of effort and resource was going to be. But then also that there is sort of a miscommunication or a misunderstanding of what needs to happen next and who is responsible for it. Usually there is something that needs to be done and didn't get done for a week. It went, it fell off somebody's plate for a couple of weeks. Not because they didn't want to do it, but they didn't realize that it was on them. They didn't have all the information that they needed to actually complete that step, so they just moved it down their to-do list. And you can pretty quickly inflate especially your average times by having a segment of your customers or fixed stages of your onboarding plan that sort of fall prey to that behavior, and the fix is probably easier than you would think once you know where to go and fix.
Totally.
So maybe that's sort of a good segue into the data side and the optimization. How do you think about reporting on this? I know that's a topic that we talk to folks a lot about, especially if you're running onboarding or you have been running onboarding at a smaller scale and you're now sort of trying to really build a repeatable, operationalized process, or if you're running this in a tool that is not connected to all the other systems that the rest of your teams are using.
Yeah, it's a great question. So this is what I was just showing was the plan template. From that, you create versions of that plan for individual customers. That is now their plan. And then this is what the Arrows dashboard would look like once you have that. So these are customers going through onboarding. They have plans on them. But you can see really what is on the Hubs or the Arrows side is this homepage, a place to create and save those templates, and then the integration side. This is where you set up all those different data points to send back and forth between Arrows to HubSpot. For perspective, it's just a bunch of drop-down fields where we have 30 or so plan attributes that would make up any sort of combination of reporting and data that you need. And then we allow you to sync them to properties inside of a HubSpot deal or ticket. In this case, I'm using deals. What this lets you do, though, is use things like HubSpot's native pipelines, which we're used to managing customers through sales cycles, and use that same type of visualization and all the reporting and native data that comes with it to manage the onboarding process. And in our world, what we do is we have automations in HubSpot that create a new deal for a customer once they are done with sales, and that automatically puts them in this ready for onboarding bucket in our onboarding pipeline. You can see here similar things you're used to in a sales pipeline, like total value. These are customized fields that are actually syncing in from arrows. So what I can see at a high level is, where is everyone at in this process? These phase names can match the same phase, or these stage names can match the phase names on your actual plan that you're sharing with customers. And I can at a high level see who they are, what's the next step on their plan. This is pulling in the current phase or current task on a plan. And then this is kind of an overall calculated summary of what's going on. So every Monday, I actually pull this pipeline up with our sales and marketing and leadership teams, and we go through where everyone is. We discuss where people are stuck. I get a good sense of where customers are in this process. And if I look at one of these individual customers real quick, the other advantage of the Arrows integration is you get this Arrows card, which gives you that high-level visibility. So now I can do my job out of HubSpot without really needing to leave HubSpot. So I can create a plan for a customer. I can share the plan with a customer. I can view it, update the status, delete it if I need to. If I open this plan real quick, this is a version of that plan now. So we took a copy of that template and created a copy for this specific customer. You can see here in this version, sequential phasing is turned on. So all those future phases are collapsed and hidden out of the way until this first thing is done. And these individual data points are those attributes that we had just shown in that integrations tab. Now, what this lets you do is actually look at reports, and this is the beauty of having all these data points. These are just properties in HubSpot that we're pushing data into. But what HubSpot lets you then do is use its reports to set up things like this onboarding progress report or pipeline report. You can see a combination of unique CRM data as well as unique plan data that's being pushed into here. So at a high glance, I can now see who are those customers, who is the deal owner on them, highlight where things are potentially missing or need attention, like this one is missing a deal owner. I can see their plan status for the Arrows plan in this case. I can see when the target date is. I can see how many days are left to that target date. Obviously, I can filter and sort things quickly if I need to prioritize. I can also see who the current task or what the current task is. And this is a demo account, so this got wiped this morning. But I could also quickly see the contact that's assigned to the actual task itself. So from this one view, I get a very, very holistic but also detailed understanding of what's going on in my entire onboarding world. And then if I go down a little bit, I have additional dashboards and reports in here that give me the next layer of visibility. So how much are these accounts worth and who's responsible for them? How many total accounts is each person looking at today? So I could see here that Stuart's working on 2 deals right now, whereas I'm working on 3 or 8, sorry. That might be a little bit swayed, and I might need to assign new stuff to Stuart going forward. I can also use internal HubSpot tasks, and this is part of workflows we set up or can have you set up, to trigger internal HubSpot tasks when a customer is ready for onboarding. So this really becomes my control panel of being able to quickly see everything at a high level. I can also go down and look at how many customers are in each stage. Now, the other thing that I can do is look at how much time is being spent on each task. So this is the number of days a customer is physically on this specific task in the plan. None of these are concerning. This is also set up as a demo, so I can see these people have been on these things for a day, or they're just starting on them. 0 means that they just started today on them. But imagine this send custom data request had been sitting here for 20 days. Like, that would be an instant red flag for me to take a look at and understand why. This goes back to that whole topic we were just talking about, optimizing. Is it a bigger problem if multiple customers are stuck on that send custom data request for X amount of days that is beyond your ideal SLA for how long that takes? So real life example, we think it shouldn't take more than 2 days to schedule your kickoff call. If I'm noticing customers are stuck on that for 10 days and it's happening multiple times, maybe there's something wrong with my task. Is it the wrong URL? Is it pushing to the wrong scheduling page? Are the directions not clear in there? So that is how you now tie all of that activity a customer is or isn't doing and bring it into your CRM and look at that from a holistic level and be able to optimize this grander process of, oh, customers keep getting stuck on this kickoff call. Something's going on here. Unpack that, fix it, and see over time, does that change? The other thing this lets you do is again, flag where are those common pitfalls, and then determine, do I move this later in the life cycle? Is it pertinent to making progress? Or ask your customers. They just might be stuck. They might need some help. They might need some hand-holding. The beauty of all this is you can then, from here, set all sorts of triggers and task reminders and calculations and automations even. So I've set up things for customers like, if a customer is stuck on this task for more than 3 days, send the email reminder in addition to the arrows reminders that get sent for overdue tasks and tasks like that. So you can then trickle that into HubSpot emails or marketing campaigns and trigger all sorts of other communications that are contingent on where they are or aren't potentially in that process. But now all of this data is at your fingertips. All those individual data points from the plan can be synced to any property that you create in the deal or in the ticket. And then you can use that to really power this, both visibility into the process for the rest of your organization, but I think even more important, getting your hands on this type of data that historically would be lost in spreadsheets or lost in emails or managed in some sort of other system that isn't the CRM, where you likely want to be doing your day-to-day work anyway, plus giving visibility to your leadership teams.
Yeah, I think that if you're looking to build a scalable, operationalized process, having that data available and to be able to use it as the sort of jumping off point for everything else that you need to do, right? The customer-facing onboarding plan is going to keep track of and provide that visibility for the customer, provide that sort of continuous, here's where we are, here's the path, here's what we need to do next, sort of view for the customer, but internally give you everything that you need to run everything in a way that doesn't require you to go in and manually check up on everybody. You can sort of make that much more. You can give yourself the list of highest priority tasks so that you can look at them when they become important rather than having to constantly be trying to figure out what to prioritize.
Right. And this happens all in real time. So if I come in here and if we look at this arrows card here, it'll say task 1 of 16 is complete. This is the next thing up. Now, if I come in here and actually make some progress on this plan, or the customer makes some progress, let's say they finish this task. Now they unlock the next set of phases from there and they complete this one. And if I jump back into HubSpot, this all refreshes in real time. So now this should say 3 tasks of 16 are done. Here's the next thing up. So I quickly get an idea of what's going on, who this next thing is assigned. All these data points fill out accordingly as these things finish on the arrows side of the plan. So as customers are off doing their things, I get this high-level visibility here. The team can get this high-level visibility here, so sales reps don't have to come and ask every time, where is this customer? What are they doing? I handed them off to you a week ago. Where are they in the process? And then if you get into those higher-level reports, dashboards, pipeline views, you can really start to both see granular, holistic stuff and go into the weeds, understand exactly where each customer is. All of that happens for you on this side, all while your customers are ideally making progress, or if they're getting stuck, at least you know where and why, and hopefully you're catching it faster than you were before.
Yeah, totally. Cool. I think that's a good place to sort of pause. If there's any questions, let us know in the chat, and we can dive into anything specific. I know we've gone for sort of 45 minutes. Also here, we will of course have the recording, so if there's anything that you want to go back into, Shareil has a great video on how to build out that dashboard that he just showed in HubSpot. So we'll also send that along with the recording. But if there's any questions, let us know. We can dive into anything specific. One final question for you, Shareil. Like, if you are in a place where you currently have your onboarding process either not documented at all, or you've sort of started to think about it as sort of an internal facing tool, as an internal facing process, what do you think is the biggest advantage or the biggest reason to go think about how would I put this in front of the customer? How would I create a customer facing version of this process that is either in my head or just an internal document?
That's tough, because I think there's 2 really good answers. I think the biggest advantage, the biggest outright advantage, is getting customers to their moment to the point that they came to you for in the first place. So whatever those steps are, putting those on paper to get them to that value is, I think, the utmost critical importance. The second piece of it, of like actually starting to document it and put it on paper, is you likely already know all these steps in your head, and you might be overwhelming yourself, which then prevents you from making progress generally on this topic. But if you actually write them out, you can better see how much needs to potentially happen, or you might learn that it is less than you thought. But you can't have a ton of meaningful cross-departmental collaboration on this topic, which I think you really need in order to do onboarding or customer success, or really any part of the lifecycle well. There has to be internal cross-departmental collaboration. And I don't think you can have a meaningful internal conversation without having at least mapped out parts of the process. Because that conversation entails giving feedback to sales on where things are being dropped, giving feedback to marketing on what needs to be updated, giving feedback to your own onboarding teams and customer success teams of the types of objections and challenges you're running into. And that all starts with having this, whatever this grand thing is on paper, so that you can then say, Stuart, this is a part that I think you can help optimize. Shareil, this is the part I think you can help fix. If you do all that and do it continuously, and that starts by defining what you're trying to accomplish, mapping all those steps out, then you can get it to a point of at least putting it in front of a customer. Know that it will never be perfect, and so don't spend time trying to get it to that point. It doesn't exist. And know that you're always going to change it. So get it on paper to start all of those conversations, I think, is the most critical part of it, because you can't optimize things, you can't change things, you can't understand the data, you can't understand anything we just showed until you start actually documenting that initial process.
Cool. That's a great spot to leave it in. Well, thank you so much to Shareil. Thank you so much to everybody for joining. As mentioned, we'll send out the recording. If you are interested in Arrows, the product, let us know at arrows. More than happy to jump on a call and show you what we're working on, but also just talk about your onboarding process and some of the challenges that you're facing. Happy to help and see how Arrows can help there as well. But thank you to everyone for joining. We'll send out the recording and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. Have a great afternoon.